I have learned that over the years, that history is unconcerned with the trivia and the trash of rumors and gossip floating around Parliament Hill. History is only concerned with the big-ticket items, the big-ticket items that have shaped the future of Canada. I joined the House of Commons in 1983 as leader from Central Nova as a member of Parliament. The Prime Minister was Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And I had known him very well in Montreal. We had a very friendly association. And we embarked on a series of major debates in the House of Commons, which were nonpartisan and highly regarded and highly respected, because we talked about national issues in Canada's future. One day, Pierre Trudeau said, "C'est en fin de soirée que l'on voit les meilleurs danseurs." The translation? It's at evening's end that one sees the best dancers. And I think that what Pierre meant was that it takes years, and not a few months or a few years, but it takes years before one can make a judgment as to how a Prime Minister or Premier has handled his responsibilities. By way of introduction, let me mention a few of the big-ticket items that our guest speaker tonight. This is far from the trivia and the trash and the rumors of Parliament Hill. Let me deal with some of the items, pardon me, that our guest speaker has had to deal with during his time in office. First, the pandemic, the greatest challenge that any Prime Minister has happened to deal with for Canada in 156 years. This is remarkable. And everybody says that our Prime Minister and our Premiers conducted themselves as well as anybody else around the world in dealing with this, and this is a big ticket item. Secondly, how about the renegotiation of NAFTA with Donald Trump? Now, I did free trade with Ronald Reagan, and then I did NAFTA with George Bush, Herbert Walker Bush. And let me tell you, there's one hell of a difference between negotiating with those two gentlemen and negotiating with our friend, President Trump. Trump was out to sabotage Canada in many important ways in this, and it took a vision and a steady hand. And I saw the Prime Minister because he invited me in as an advisor to his cabinet. And I saw the big decisions he had to take at crucial moments. And I saw the end result of this incredibly challenging negotiation. The end result was a significant victory for Canada, and it is due to the leadership that we saw from the Government of Canada on this most important occasion. And what does it mean? Well, NAFTA today, just imagine if you didn't have this, if we lost this. NAFTA today is a grouping of 3 countries with 500 million people, representing 7% of the population of the world, which generates 28% of the entire wealth of the world every single year. That's what NAFTA means to Canada, the millions of jobs, the prosperity, and this was secured, in spite of Trump's opposition, this was secured by Prime Minister Trudeau and his colleagues, and that is a big ticket item. And then we have the Russia-Ukraine war, first war on European soil since Hitler in 80 years. And Canada, with a population, Ukrainian diaspora of 1.5 million people, had an obligation. My government was the first government in the Western world to recognize the independence of the Ukraine. And it was very important that Canada sustain, and support that initiative. And the government of Canada stepped up. We're a member of NATO. They fulfilled their obligations there. Bilaterally, the government of Canada fulfilled its obligations to the Ukraine. And just last week, we saw again, not for the first time, the Prime Minister of Canada in Kiev with the President supporting all of his new initiatives, most of all, freedom from Russia tyranny. And this is what has to take place. The Ukrainians, this is not a question of, as Trump says, well, I don't care who wins. Well, I care who wins, and the Prime Minister cares who wins, and it has to be the Ukrainians. This was a big ticket item. Now, as Frank has said, and as I say, he doesn't speak long enough. But as Frank has said, the truth of the matter is, anybody who's been there knows that Atlantic Canada has not always been favorably treated by the government of Canada. And the way you make it up is that the Prime Minister of Canada has to step in himself and say, this is what's going to happen. Not the cabinet, I say this respectfully, not the bureaucracy, the Prime Minister. And so what's happened now? Well, there's an expression in Quebec that says, il faut absolument qu'il existe un préjugé favorable à Ottawa. There must be a favorable prejudice that exists in Ottawa with the Prime Minister so that he insists that big ticket items take place in favor of Atlantic Canada. And when you get the obstruction from the bureaucracy or other areas of Canada, hell, when I did Hibernia, which in today's terms, Frank, would be between $8 and $9 billion of cash to Newfoundland and Labrador to get Hibernia going, when I did that, the opposition was everywhere, including the Globe and Mail, our great national newspaper. I mean, at one point, my support was down to members of my immediate family. And I called my mother, and she put me on hold. And I was paying for the call. And so this préjugé favorable, the Prime Minister has it in spades when it comes to Atlantic Canada. And you only have to look at what's happened around here for the last 7 or 8 years to know that that's the case. So these are the big ticket items, some of them, that I think historians will reflect on. Not the nonsense you read about in Parliament, but the big, serious stuff that history will deal with. Bill Clinton once said, leadership, and this is all about leadership. Bill said, leadership is the capacity to look around the corner of history just a little bit. Well, this is what this weekend is all about. We are here, all of us, to look around the corner of history and see how we can advance the cause of Atlantic Canada. Not conservatives or liberals or NDPers, Atlantic Canadians, dealing with the big ticket items. It's said in the Old Testament that young men have visions and old men dream dreams. Well, great nations like Canada need a combination of both, visions and great dreams. The object of this conference is to remind us all of the magnificence of Canada and of what we can achieve together if we remember the vision and dreams of our forefathers who built this country and now can't count on us to carry it forward from generation to generation, from success to success, from one century to the next. That's what we're here for, and that, with the Prime Minister's assistance, that is what we're going to do. Thank you.